Could we see a surprise MVP of the NFL based on Week 18? We'll talk about the candidates on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every Wednesday, by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about who's more dangerous in the playoffs, the Bucs or the Falcons. Talk about the Chiefs and the Bills sitting their starters and whether that's the right thing to do, but we will start with a discussion about surprise MVP candidates. Before we get into it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started. Luke, so we know about the top two MVP candidates. Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson. Those are the clear top two guys. But I am here to tell you that I think that we have three other candidates that I think should get their name in the discussion. And based on what we see in Week 18, should potentially even win the award. And the first candidate that I want to bring up is in your neck of the woods, Luke, Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, MVP conversation on December 31st. I guess on New Year's. On New Year's Day.
Out. Yeah, it's a new year. It's a new Sam Darnold. But you're the perfect guy to have on, obviously, as our Locked On Vikings expert as well. I'm sorry, but if Sam Darnold goes 15-2, gets the number one seed in the NFC, and has played the way that he has played, like in that previous game, they didn't just win because of the rest of the team. Sam Darnold is making plays to elevate the players around him. He is being a truck, not a trailer in some of these moments. Tell me that I'm crazy. Sam Darnold should be a serious MVP candidate.
I've been howling about this for like weeks.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell you you're crazy, but the problem is that I don't think he's ever going to get enough credit because Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are playing so well, and Kevin O'Connell is already like the shoe-in for Coach of the Year. That cat's kind of already out of the bag. You can't even get it on FanDuel anymore. So having all of those elements, it's really hard to be seen as MVP versus somebody like Josh Allen, who is, what they've got going on at receiver. Like, I like Keon Coleman, but there's no Justin Jefferson over there, right?
Yeah, no.
So that's gonna stop. Like, practically, that's probably gonna be a deadbolt on this thing. But in terms of deservingness, the idea of who is valuable, like, there's a play from this recent game against the Packers that I think says it all, where the Packers are in a cover 2 setup. So they got one deep guy and then two underneath zones that are like closing in on the window of a curl route that Justin Jefferson is running. This is Justin Jefferson. He's running a curl route. There's a guy that's too deep because he's the deep safety, and then two underneath zones that are going to close in on him. And Darnold has to zip that thing through. He has to time it absolutely perfectly. If he waits until that route turns around, it's going to be too late. It's getting picked off. So he has to throw with anticipation. Justin Jefferson doesn't do anything on that particular play to like bail out a mistake. He's not doing anything to like paper over a problem with Sam Darnold. He's running a curl route and all he has to do is not drop the ball. That is a Sam Darnold play. And there are so many of those. The title of my podcast after week 2, of the week 2 win over San Francisco, was like, thanks Sam Darnold for that win, because he did that. Like, it's been like this. What he is doing is high level quarterbacking, period.
Yes.
Going through pure progressions all the way, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, through peer progressions in time, making accurate throws down the field, one of the highest average depths of target in the league. The degree of difficulty is insanely high, and he is doing insanely well with it. That should put you in the MVP race. I absolutely get why he's not going to get that consideration, because supporting cast, it's a narrative award, not a stats award. It's not like an objective evaluation. It's a narrative award, and the narrative just ain't there. He's still like a, pat you on the head good story, but I don't think that that's appropriate.
The mobility from watching him.
The pocket movement is, if he was wearing a red jersey with number 15 on it, we wouldn't blink.
Yes.
Watch those plays and argue with me. I'm right. I'm sorry.
Right. It's Joe Burrow-esque. Joe Burrow, I think,
that's a better comp.
He doesn't have elite mobility, like scrambling and running.
Right. Like he can run, but he's the best pocket mover in the league. I've thought that about Burrow.
I call him a pocket
and I know you want to bring him up too.
Yeah, I call him a pocket Jedi for that reason. Before I get to Joe Burrow, though, I do just want to talk about Saquon Barkley. And my guy Gino from Locked On Eagles mentioned that.
This game was awesome. Saquon Barkley goes for over 2,000 yards on the season. He's 101 yards away from eclipsing Eric Dickerson's record of the most rushing yards in a single season. Nick Sirianni recognized what was going on when Saquon eclipsed that 2,000-yard marker. And what did he do? He took a timeout and allowed Saquon Barkley to get his curtain call, to take in the crowd, just giving him his flowers in a
Listen, I want to give Saquon Barkley his flowers as well. If you go for 2,000 yards as a running back and maybe even break the rushing yardage record, you deserve to be in the MVP conversation. This year has been about getting back to the run game and getting back to defense, the cyclical nature of the NFL, and nothing would put the cherry on top of that Sunday like Saquon Barkley being a true MVP candidate. He deserves more love for what he's done, turning this Eagles team around.
It's if there was like a Time Person of the Year kind of thing, like Saquon Barkley, like he represents the season so well.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think this will ever happen with a running back again. I just think that's dead unless they change the parameters of MVP like they did with Comeback of the Year this year. Like the award is fundamentally designed to always be a quarterback, and that's just where we are because of how we view value and how we view quarterbacks and value. Quarterback's the most important position, and we know that. I kind of think that sucks. Like that's no fun,
right?
But
right.
It's the way it is, and it's just like you break the record, it still ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, you're right about that, but we do got to mention Joe Burrow, who's been playing great football, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But to me, Luke, the reality is his team has not played well enough. You can't be the most valuable player and be a guy on a team who has a losing record or is just barely a wild card team. To me, that doesn't compute, because if you were more valuable than these other players, your team would be better. And it's not like what Buffalo is working with is significantly better on offense than what the Bengals are working with. Like the Bengals have great weapons too, so you can't say Sam Darnold isn't an MVP because he's got great weapons and then say that Joe Burrow is the MVP when he's got the best two wide receivers in the NFL as a tandem. So to me, if I would rank these surprise MVP candidates, I would have Sam Darnold 3, Saquon Barkley 4, and Joe Burrow 5th. What would be your ranking?
I'd have Barkley 5th for sure. Between Darnold and Burrow, I'll probably put Darnold above Burrow just again because they're having more success.
Even though
no, of course I'm a homer. Yeah, go Sam Darnold 1,000 years. I'm a lifelong fan of Sam Darnold. Whatever team he plays for next year, if it's not the Vikings, like I will watch those games.
I'm going. Yeah.
I'm in. But I think even though the failure of the Bengals is very clearly not Joe Burrow's fault, being incapable of overcoming the shortcomings elsewhere on your team is like there's always somebody that is capable of overcoming the shortcomings elsewhere on their team. And like look at like Lamar Jackson. That Ravens defense has collapsed at times, and Lamar Jackson has still managed to get them in the lead in their division into a good playoff position. So yeah, like that is kind of a key difference. But again, like that is not an evaluation of those two quarterbacks. What I just said, that's a narrative thing, and the MVP is a narrative award.
Correct. And I love it. I love that it's a narrative award. I love the narratives.
What it is.
I love the stories. Give it all to me. But with that being said, We do got to talk about some of these MVP candidates and their games this weekend, including Josh Allen, who is going to cheat the system to keep his starting streak alive. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but look, it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways to pick up a W, whether it be which player will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. Of course, they have the money lines, the spreads, the over-unders, the player props, the single game parlays. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about some surprise MVP candidates. Probably won't win, but definitely deserve their flowers for the way that they've played this season. Now I want to look at some of these games because we got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, both most likely sitting their starters this weekend. And the question becomes, should they sit their starters? Is that the right thing to do? And my guys from the Locked On Chiefs podcast talked about exactly that.
I'm excited about the scenarios because if we go back and we look through history, when they've had this opportunity before, they generally do rest their stars and a few other players. Now, there's no reason to see Chris Jones. There's no reason to even expect him to be dressed. Perfectly fine. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes should not play. Have to protect them because we know what a grind that it's been. After that, it gets a little bit interesting. And I think question number one for me is, in years past, they rested Rashee Rice, didn't even activate him. They rested MVS for a game as well. I think it's just a little bit different because Hollywood's barely been back. I don't know if they're going to rest him, but I certainly would. I would take no chances at diminishing weapons for the playoff run on a meaningless football game in Week 18.
Don't disagree with you at all. It's going to be very curious to me to see who they sit and who they don't.
Always makes for an interesting discussion about, you know, the rest conversation versus the momentum conversation. But with where I'm at with Kansas City, I think they absolutely should rest everyone possible. Now, I think that there's another reason they should do that, though, Luke, not just because they want to keep people healthy.
Oh, I see what you're doing here.
But, do you really want the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs? If you're the Chiefs, the conversation becomes, do you want to beat the Broncos so that the Bengals can play the Bills? Because the Bills are your toughest competition.
They could take them out. Yep.
The Bengals have taken out the Bills.
There's precedent for this.
Yes,
there's precedent for this. If you remember all the way back to 2009, the Colts played the Jets in Week 17, and the Jets needed to win that one to get the 6th seed. The Colts had already locked everything up. They rested their starters. The Jets very easily beat, I want to say it was Curtis Painter.
Yes.
And got in, and then ended up playing the Colts in the AFC Championship game, which the Colts won. This Frankenstein-like monster that they got to invite into the ring with them in the AFC Championship and then put him down and they made it to the Super Bowl. So there is precedent for this, but personally, I think that if you're in the NFL, you probably have reasonable respect for everybody out there, right? Joe Burrow is good. Josh Allen is good. Broncos are playing good ball, and they would be if you ended up playing the Broncos, it'd be the third time. It's really hard to beat a team a third time. Yes. So they know you so well. You might not want them in it either. You'd rather have somebody a little less familiar that hasn't played you since early in the season. So there's a lot of considerations there, and I feel like most of these teams just go, you know what? Let's let that sort itself out, and let's just do what we got to do that's best for our players' bodies, because we know that those guys are in our building. We don't necessarily know. Like, what if you do let the Broncos in and then they beat you and you look like an idiot, right? Like it's too debatable, but it's not debatable that like, let's not get Mahomes injured is true.
Yeah, well, and also you could beat the Broncos and then the Dolphins win, and it's the Dolphins that go to Buffalo, and then Buffalo has I think the Broncos are a better team than the Miami Dolphins. So then you're giving Buffalo a super easier game because Miami has the tiebreaker over the Bengals. So you could play that game and say, hey, we're going to try our best to beat the Broncos because we want to see one of the other teams in, but it might be Miami, which just makes it easier for Buffalo, and then you got to play Buffalo anyways. And it could be Cincinnati, and if you're the Chiefs, who's the only team in the AFC during this Patrick Mahomes era to beat Kansas City in the playoffs? It's Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So like you said, you don't want to let them in to play the Bills, and then they beat the Bills, and then they come and they beat you too because they're hot and they're playing for their lives, and they've been playing playoff football for 2 straight months. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, and I wonder if those conversations are being had in Kansas City at all.
I mean, I'm sure every conversation, like no stone unturned, right?
Right.
But I'm sure it's more about health. But what do the Bills do? I mean, they are not as banged up, and is there a sense of momentum because they have been kind of like hammering dudes? Do you worry about that, or do you just like take your rest because you're not getting a real bye?
If I'm Buffalo, I feel fine. Like we just beat the Jets, 40 gazillion to nothing or 40 to 8, whatever the actual score was.
Them, my God.
Yeah, like we're fine. We have momentum. We know who we want to be. We have everybody in their roles. Like we don't have any questions that need to be answered. What I don't know about is starting Josh Allen for one series or a couple of plays and then taking him out so he can keep a start streak going. I'm not telling you that I'm angry about it, despite how I sound. I just always sound mad, Luke. It's just I'm like the Hulk in Marvel. My secret is I'm always mad. But I don't know. That just feels a little fishy to me. I don't know if I like that. And that's what Sean McDermott said they're going to do is Josh Allen is going to play very, 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 very limited amount of snaps to keep
his feet wet. I kind of get it.
I know, but they're literally trying to game the system and keep his start streak going, even though he isn't actually playing in the game. I just don't know.
Is there like a contract reason for that? Or are they just trying to get a stat?
Josh Allen for stats. Josh Allen good, record, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it's kind of nonsense. It's like the Michael Strahan sack record now. Like, that's forever tainted.
Okay, on this, I rewatched that play. I kind of feel like Brett Favre was never getting away from that one. Even like he did slide into it, but like
he protected himself more than gave the sack away. He was still in a position to be sacked.
Yeah, he just didn't want to get hit, which he always did that. But that might be like really controversial. Anyways, on the same note, like I don't know what the Bills are doing there. I kind of get his feet wet a little bit, like give him a series or two just so that the rust doesn't collect. Okay, sure, but then you're not actually really risking an injury. But to go back to Saquon Barkley chasing a rushing record in a meaningless game, do you sit him, or do you, or is that worth it? Is it worth chasing? Is it worth the risk to chase history? And then you can have on your video boards every single time, Saquon Barkley, leading rusher ever. You can put. You can have it like all the press releases in the world about it. You can have an event about it. You can come back in 20 years and celebrate you can commemorate the anniversary of it. Or do you go, we're a little worried about maybe an ankle sprain?
You sit him. You don't go after that for a couple of reasons. Number one, all of that pomp and circumstance that you just described, you get that anyway because he went over 2K. Going over 2,000 yards is such a magnificent thing that you get it anyways. Also, it would be an extra game for him to get that number. And I think that does sully it just a little bit. That's how this is going to get broken one way or another. If he breaks the record.
And that's how Dickerson did it because it was 14 before. So that's just how it goes.
True. So anyways, I think that you get enough of that goodwill and that celebration stuff with the 2K. You do not risk your best player in a meaningless game. You just simply can't do that. If he was like 20 or 30 yards away, maybe, but it's 100 yards. Like I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
There's a part of me that wants to, for like Dan Campbell reasons, that's just like, no, football game, we play football game. But if they sit him, like if they do sit him, people are going to be like, oh, rats, didn't get the record, and then never think about it again. So it's like not that high stakes. But there is a part of me that's just like, I don't know, go beat somebody up. You can kind of go ruin the Commander. They don't play the Commanders.
No. They play the Giants.
They play the Commanders play the Cowboys. So
yes.
There's no meaning on it at all.
Exactly.
Again, and you're not getting a bye, which you maybe thought you were going to get a bye. You had a shot at a bye, but you're not getting a bye now. So you have to kind of make the bye where you have it.
Which makes it even more important. And since they haven't had Jalen Hurts for a couple of weeks, the run game has taken even more of a toll. I think Saquon needs this break, and don't try to chase the record. But, there is something to say for smiting the football god. So it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. But two teams that do need to play their absolute best and play their starters this week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. Who is more dangerous in the playoffs? Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of the football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now. I'm having a blast. This week, looking at Jared Goff, more than 230 passing yards. Maybe Saquon Barkley if he plays for a touchdown or more. It's so easy to use. I love how fast the payouts are. I've gotten paid in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit. Plus, this week's promos, like Taco Tuesday discounts, add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about some surprise MVP candidates, whether teams should sit or bench their starters in the final week of the year. But again, two teams that cannot afford to do that are the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are still battling for the NFC South crown. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the driver's seat this week. They have a game against the Carolina Panthers. But then the Atlanta Falcons, no, it's the other way around. The Buccaneers play the Saints, and then the Atlanta Falcons play the Carolina Panthers. And the Falcons need to win, and the Buccaneers need to lose for the Falcons to get in, but that's still certainly possible. The question becomes, can the Atlanta Falcons make noise in the playoffs, or do you think the Buccaneers are a more dangerous team? I'll tell you that my guy Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons is a little skeptical of the Michael Penix experience, and that may lead us into who's more dangerous.
I thought it was an up and down performance. I thought, late in the game, in the final 4 minutes in regulation, you saw sort of, the best of Michael Penix during that time. But I think the first 56 minutes of the game, it was much more up and down, and he made some good throws in that time, but he was also very spotty. The Falcons' efficiency throwing the football was not there for 3.5 quarters. And, I don't think Penix played poorly. He looked like a rookie to me. And again, that kind of contrasts how he looked last week. And as you said, I think some of that is to be expected. I've talked about this elsewhere on Locked On Sports Atlanta, sort of where you think about the sort of parallels between Michael Penix's first two starts and Matt Ryan's first two starts, where Matt Ryan looked really great against a terrible Lions team that went 0-16 that year. And then the following week on the road against a quality Bucs team that won the division the previous year, started that game 0-9.
So if you've been listening to Aaron all year like I have, he's been skeptical of the Michael Penix thing. He didn't even want Penix to come in there when they benched him for Kirk Cousins. Lauren Cox on yesterday's show floated that if the Falcons get in the playoffs, they should go back to Kirk Cousins if they take on the Minnesota Vikings.
He has
or whatever.
Experience losing a couple playoff games.
Right. I think it's all crazy. Look,
Nah, he's cooked.
I think Tampa Bay is the more dangerous team because I trust Baker Mayfield, but I do think that the Atlanta Falcons have a more talented team. And if Michael Penix is playing good football, I think the Falcons could actually pose a more significant threat to whether it be the Vikings or whether it be the Lions. I think the best version of the Falcons is better than the best version of the Buccaneers, is what I'm getting at. But the
Who are you
odds of
scared
getting
on the Falcons, though, like is
Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, like I think that they
Kyle
have
Pitts
players.
is trash. I'm sorry, I can't
Oh,
go with you on
come
Kyle Pitts. He stinks.
Come on, he doesn't stink.
He loses contested
All right.
catches all the time, and he doesn't block. He's Mike Gesicki with a better draft pedigree.
That's a pretty decent player to me. That's a dangerous player.
He's a role player. He's a move tight end. He's a role player. Look, Drake London is a good receiver. He doesn't move the needle for me in the way that, look at the other teams that you're talking about. He doesn't move the needle like Puka does. He doesn't move the needle like Justin Jefferson
I'm not talking
does,
about
like
the
AJ
Rams.
Brown does.
I'm talking about the Falcons and the Buccaneers. You want to,
But that's who they're going to have to play,
I've been
right? They're
high
going
on
to have to
the Rams all
play
year.
the Lions or the Vikings,
Yes.
right? They are going to have, like, Drake London is going to be like the third best receiver on the field, regardless of who that is. And Bijan Robinson, like, that run game is not the Lions' run game, right?
Well, hold on now.
Like-
Drake London is better than Jordan Addison.
No,
Yes.
absolutely not. No way. I would not make that trade straight up.
Well,
But,
contract
like,
comes into play
it's-
then, and Drake London is further along. So, yeah, I get that.
It's
but-
to me, the Falcons are a bunch of guys, and they also here's the spicy take. I kind of think they have a tougher matchup, having to play the Panthers versus the
Yes.
the
Saints.
corpse of the Saints is not going to beat
Yes.
the Bucks. So this is a moot point.
I agree. Yeah, I think the Bucks get in personally. I mean, that's my
I think the
expectation.
Bucks absolutely get in. And I think the Bucks could even end up being the 3 seed because LA is not going to start they're not going to play their starters. It sounds like.
They better. That would be foolish. To me, you cannot afford to go to the 4th seed and play the Lions or the Vikings. You cannot afford that. I'd
Unless
much
I got
rather play
a darn chef trade, I
Packers
think I
or
saw somewhere
Commanders.
that they are. So yeah, I'm with you though. I mean, I think that's you'd much rather play the Packers or the Commanders, but again, it's like, well, we play who we play, and we'll just take our rest. Like, all right, yeah, whatever. So I could see that being the case, but I don't know. We've seen Mike Evans go on a playoff run, right?
Yes.
And I trust Baker Mayfield way more than I trust Penix, way more than I trust whatever's
for
left
sure.
of Kirk Cousins. I don't think that this is remotely a conversation. I think if the Bucks do blow this and the Falcons get in, 6 teams in the NFC breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say is I agree with you. The Bucks are the more dangerous team. I just think the best version of the Falcons is still a team that could win something. But with the way that the Lions defense has looked lately, with the injuries catching up to them, and the fact that Tampa Bay already beat Detroit once this year, which was a long time ago, but still happened, I think that Tampa Bay is the right answer. But I just don't think the Falcons are a dismissive answer, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm dismissing them. I don't trust them at all. If they get into that 4 seed, then they're going to be an also ran, and we're going to forget about them in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well,
Try again. We'll see you next year.
I think that either team has a better chance against this version of the Lions than they do this version of the Vikings. And that's a crazy thing that I don't know that I would think just a couple of weeks ago.
That's
Yeah.
The Lions did such a good job. I know we're totally off the rails here, but the Lions did such a good job for a while papering over those injuries. Like, that defense held together for way longer than anyone thought they would.
Yep.
But it's like time comes for us all. Now it's I don't know. Like, your Zadarius Smith banged up defense is just they figured out how they can out physical it, and Kyle Shanahan put every beater in the book out on that in the Monday night game, and every single team, especially the teams with similar offenses like the Vikings, like the Rams, are and like Bobby Sloak and the Falcons even are looking at that one and licking their chops. But I'll never count out a team that can hang 40 on you at a given moment.
Yeah, well, at least what I would say is Tampa Bay and Detroit will be a fun game to watch no matter what. But with that being said, that is going to do it for us today here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Make sure you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop as well. For me, your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun. Stay safe out there.